Well, let's take a look at Persona 4 Golden, and of course Persona 4. There's not really much of a difference with these two games aside from some minor ones. So yeah, welcome back everyone. Yep, sorry it took so long to tackle Persona 4. I originally meant to do these videos monthly, but things didn't go according to plan. So let's take a look at the, technically fifth entry in Persona. Yeah, so for those who don't know, Persona is a spin-off of the Shin Megami Tensei series, but, obviously I'm not really going to be talking about that series too much in this video. So Persona 4 was originally released in 2008 for the PlayStation 2, but eventually saw a re-release with Persona 4 Golden on the PS Vita, before eventually making its way onto PC, PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox One and Series XS, and of course the Nintendo Switch. So, what's the story about? Well, the story revolves around a series of murders going around in a small town called Inaba. You're the protagonist, Yu Narukami, and you're very much kind of trying to figure out what's happening with quite a few other characters, obviously classmates that he meets throughout the year in his time in the town. So, now obviously listing them off, we of course have Chie, Yukiko, Yosuke, Kanji, Rise, Naoto, and of course Teddy. Basically, all of them have to work together to find the killer who's, going around and kind of stopping before basically more bad stuff happens. And so for really the first, I'd say, couple months of the game, it's just really nothing major happens other than the murders. That's not until August when the true killer, of course, later turns out copycat killer Mitsuru is of course caught, and obviously they have to fight him as he flees into the TV world. And obviously before that is just basically, the investigation team getting more members, as starting with Yukiko, Kanji, and Rise get thrown into TV, and of course Yosuke and Chie awaken into the personas once they accept their true selves, which is pretty much a theme of this game. So yeah, that's pretty much the really first couple months of the game. The second major important part is of course in September, if I recall correctly, and that's of course when Naruto kind of uses themselves as bait to lure out the actual killer, because they believed that there was someone else. Of course, this leads to a couple of revelations. Obviously, Naruto's true identity, and of course, the fact that, there's still a killer out there. Mitsuru was just a copycat, and of course, we find out who's the real killer later. Obviously, at first, they believe it to be this guy called Namatame, who kind of had been in the news recently because there was this whole big affair that got discovered leading to the first murder, and then eventually second murder, which kind of led to the investigation team forming. And obviously, eventually, Yu gets a threatening letter from a mysterious person, and he eventually gets a second threatening letter from said person, and eventually his cousin Nanako gets kidnapped. So this is probably where the story, this is where the story gets even more important than it already was before, and of course leads to the Namatame fight. They of course believe that he's the killer. Turns out, not really. He's more of a scapegoat. Basically what happened with this guy is he was throwing people into TV trying to save them, which kind of brings the question about how come two people died then, but we'll figure it out later. So basically, the day is saved, but Naga's in the hospital. Teddy disappears, and they're kind of on a path to find a true killer. So basically what happened is that the true killer is of course Adachi. It kind of feels phoned in the original Persona 4. Golden provides the Jester and later eventually Hunger social link, which kind of gives more insight on who Adachi is as a person, which frankly really should have been in the original game because nothing really suggests that Adachi might have been the killer in Persona 4. At least that's my opinion. Obviously, Teddy disappeared, eventually realized he's a shadow, and yeah, he comes back. And of course, Namatame, well, he is responsible for throwing him in the TV. He wasn't responsible for the reporters or Saki's deaths. In fact, that was Adachi, because Adachi, I think, wanted to be the reporter's bodyguard, if I recall correctly, and was the very unfortunate thing that happened to Saki as she discovered the body and got stuck with this POS. Obviously, Adachi flees into the TV world and the investigation team pursues him. This leads to his boss fight and a boss fight against something called Amino Sagiri. Now, depending on your actions, this might be the final boss fight in the game, but provided you do a couple things right, there is one extra dungeon in Golden where you have to track down Marie and fight yet another boss. And on the final day, you can fight another boss called Izanami, who's the one that kind of led Adachi to find out about the TV world, and who might have given you his powers. So, yeah, that's the final boss fight, one of the coolest boss fights in the entire series, and once she's defeated, the game ends. You head back home, but there is a small epilogue where he returns to Inaba sometime later, and you get to see what's happened with the investigation team. Persona 4 would later go on to have a few sequels, those being Arena and Arena Ultimax, a spin-off being Persona 4 Dancing, and obviously the Persona Q and Q2 games. So, what are my thoughts on Persona 4? Well, frankly, it's a really enjoyable game. I really recommend it if you haven't played it yet. Personally, it's one of my favorite RPGs that's been released. I like it a lot more than Persona 3. I feel like the story was definitely structured better, characters were more likable, and frankly, I feel like this game was a bit more easier compared to 3 in accessibility and just gameplay in general. But that's all I have for today. I'll, of course, be covering Persona 5 and Persona 5 Strikers when I get the chance, so stay tuned for those videos, and until then, goodbye. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you all have a nice